Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live inside the Beltway, joined by Chairman Mike Turner, representative from Ohio. He is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Good morning, Congressman Turner. Welcome. It's great to have you. Your district is almost in Indiana, so you got lucky. You didn't have to become a Hoosier.
That's funny. Yeah, Hugh, I come from Dayton, Ohio, the great town that has Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in it.
My uncle worked at Wright-Pat for 45 years. So you came from a great place. You represent a great place. But now you've got the House Intel Committee. This is one of the big ones. And so you just got back from Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. Can you give us some sense of what you learned from sitting down with President Sisi, King Abdullah II, and, of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Sure. Well, this is our effort to return the intelligence community back to national security. I know it sounds like an amazing thing that you'd have to do that, but after the Adam Schiff leadership, where the committee was turned down a partisan lane, we've tried to return ourselves back to, how do we protect our country and advance national security? We went to the Middle East because obviously as a committee we're focused a lot on China and Russia, but we really wanted to look to what is happening, what is the United States doing, what are the threats that we currently see there in Jordan, Israel, and Egypt. Universally, every person we spoke to, they're starving for American leadership. They're wondering where the president is, why the administration is not taking an active role in leadership and peace in the region. They're not asking for military assistance. They're not asking for aid. They're asking for leadership, Hugh.
Chairman Turner, expand on that a little bit. What would the United States be doing in the Middle East if it were doing what President Trump did?
Well, having a position. Right now, all of these leaders, first off, in any conversation, mention the debacle, withdrawal from Afghanistan and what that meant as a message to the world about American leadership. Secondly, that there are real issues that they're dealing with every day, and they just don't have anybody to call. They don't have anybody to talk to. They don't have anybody to support them, and the administration's not taking positions. They're just really leaving these nations, searching for leadership, which is why China is trying to make headway in the area. Whenever there's a vacuum, the United States loses, and authoritarian regimes try to step in.
Now, Senator Cotton told me once that when he was senator under President Obama, he would go to the Middle East and the ruler that he would meet with would change the location so he could get away from the ambassador from Team Obama. He wanted to talk candidly with Americans in position of influence. Did you run into any of that where, Chairman Turner, let's just talk candidly about what's going on here?
We had plenty of opportunity for that. I don't think there was any sense they needed to get away from the people that they currently have that are in country, but they did get a sense that the people in country are isolated. That there was, unlike Obama, where perhaps he was from top down imposing a worldview that was contrary to the United States, or a view that we were the aggressor. In this instance, I think the Biden administration is just leaving their people isolated.
One of your colleagues on the committee is Chairman Gallagher of the Select Committee, and he's on every week, and we give a lot of grief to each other. He didn't know anything about sports, but he's a pretty smart guy, and he's a Marine, so we got 3 syllables going. Tell me something about the talent on the Intel Committee, because I want people to understand. In the Senate, they're serious people. I believe that's the case now in the House with the exit of Adam Schiff.
Yeah, we have a great team, and this is I had one member from the intelligence community who say, I looked at the resumes, everybody was there, and I thought, gosh, if we were going to hire a team to run the intelligence committee, this is the team that you'd want, and that's why we really have an opportunity to break from that partisanship of the past and actually serve national security. We have people who have military experience. We have people who have intelligence community experience. We have people who have foreign policy experience. This in-depth view and work, and even long-term congressional experience from the Armed Services Committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee. This convergence of people, no one's new to Congress who's on our committee. They're appointed by the Speaker and by the Minority Leader, both of which. Kevin McCarthy came before our committee as we convened this year with Hakeem Jeffries and said, we want you guys committed to national security and to bipartisanship. We're doing that. We got a great team, and I'll tell you, these people are working really hard.
Now, Chairman Turner, I believe that the Chinese Communist Party is the iceberg threat. We see the tip of it. We talk about TikTok. We talk about the Confucius Institutes, but we have no idea what they are doing to penetrate the American society and influence our operations. Am I right, or is the media right to not pay much attention?
No, this is our major threat. China implemented a surveillance society in China where they could monitor their population through technology, through hacking, through implementing their ability to observe and surveil, and they're trying to export that. And even on this trip that we just took, they're even looking at how can they make certain the Chinese technology doesn't make its way in their telecommunication systems, how they can protect their data systems. What we see here, it's on multiple levels where China is threatening the United States. One, on conventional, they're expanding. For example, they're tripling their number of nuclear weapons going to be pointed toward the United States. There's never been an expansion like this that we have seen in modern history in decades. Secondly, then with the export of technology and their attempts to penetrate our data systems, including espionage against American companies. And then, of course, their attempts at influence, where you see them even being so brazen as to open police stations throughout the world, and even in the United States, where we're openly operating, trying to undermine both people who are here, who are Chinese nationals, people who are Americans, in ways in which China believes that it would advance their goals and objectives.
Now, Chairman Turner, when people watched The Americans, the series that won all the Emmys, they thought it was a trip in the Wayback Machine, and they fell through into the 80s, and that was the Cold War, and that was the bad old days. That's my first job in government 40 years ago, as the Special Assistant to the Attorney General for Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrants. And it was stunning, at the age of 26, to see how much espionage was going on in the United States. I don't have any clearances anymore. It's been years since I've had clearances, since 1989. But I think the level and extent of the CCP's operation in the United States far out expands the Soviets. Do you think I'm right about that?
Absolutely. The difference here is where you had to look for people who were coming into the United States. They are actually doing it all the way over there in Beijing. And you have even companies, federal government agencies, they report millions and millions of daily attacks in the cyber realm, in addition to than what the traditional espionage that you would have been familiar with. This cyber connectivity that we have represents an unbelievable opportunity for China and certainly a threat to us.
So, Chairman Turner, does the Bureau get this? I know Director Wray is a serious man. I don't know him personally, but a lot of people who do have told me he's a very serious guy. He comes before your committee, and so does the head of NSA, and so does the head of DIA, and the head of the CIA, and the DNI. They all come before your committee. Do they have the right focus and executed purpose to forget the stuff that doesn't matter and focus on the main threat, focus and execute? Do you think they've pivoted to that?
I think the CIA does. I think certainly Director Burns. I think the Office of Director of National Intelligence, certainly Avril Haines does. I think Director Wray is highly focused on the politicalization of the FBI, the weaponization of the FBI. I think he's more interested in watching Americans than he is Chinese that are trying to hurt our nation.
How do we change that? That's not acceptable.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is the main target and debate that is currently happening about the FBI in Congress. You said that they come before our committee. It's true. They all come before our committee, except for Director Wray. Last time before our committee, it was highly confrontational, both Democrats and Republicans, with everybody pointing their finger right at him and saying, "We don't see you. You don't hear from us. You are treating Congress as if we don't matter." Congress created the FBI. According to the Constitution, obviously, we have the subpoena power, which you're seeing now beginning to be asserted by the House against the FBI. We're going to have to see if Director Wray is going to recognize that democracy happens in that Capitol building, and he reports to us.
Well, expand on that in our last minute, Chairman Turner. The FBI needs to focus on China. I mean, almost 90% on China, right? Am I right? They just that's our existential threat.
It's a threat to our country, but as you were describing, it's a threat within our country, and that's what needs to be ferreted out. Because Director Wray has not spent time up on Capitol Hill, I think he spent too much time with politicos and is trying to satisfy those on the left who believe that Americans are the greatest threat to America. They're not. He needs to focus on real threats.
Now, we do have domestic extremists. Obviously, the shooting in Texas was by a white supremacist. The shooting in Nashville was by a trans activist. We've got that. But I mean, it's dwarfed by China. We got 30 seconds, Chairman Turner. What's the scale? Is it 100 to 1? Is it 1,000 to 1 in terms of relative threat?
It's certainly overwhelming, and that's the point. He needs to focus on the top priority. Certainly, we have threats. He needs to focus on all of them, but the top priority is obviously China.
Chairman Mike Turner from Ohio, chair of the House Intel Committee. Thank you. Keep coming back. Good Buckeyes, common sense, running the Intel Committee. Keep that guy from Wisconsin away from the wheel. I'm telling you, Gallagher, not sure about that. Stay tuned, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Tuesday, May the 9th, in the year of our Lord 2023. We begin with an update from Israel. Well, overnight, the Israeli Air Force bombed many targets in Gaza and, I believe, up north. Not sure if it was just Gaza at this point. But at least 13 are dead, including 3 senior members of the Islamic Jihad terror group and 4 children. According to early reports from Gaza, we don't know if that's confirmed, but Israel has confirmed that the 3 dead terrorists are indeed dead, and they were the senior leaderships of Islamic Jihad. So all of Israel is on guard today and on edge for expected reprisals. More news has come out on the Texas gunman who attacked the Allen outlet malls outside of Dallas. He fantasized over race wars on social media. He lasted 3 months in the Army before he was terminated. That was someone who didn't take. And his social media on a Russian social media platform is just rife with racist, hardcore racism stuff. Don't hide from it. It's absolutely true. And you got to deal with the fact that the web is full of back alleys and corners where grime and hate grow, and we've got to get our arms around how to identify, a la Minority Report style, those who are killers. And I asked Mark Zuckerberg to his face once if they could do that, and he said, no, we can't. I think AI might be able to help us, but I'm not sure we want to go there. But we have to begin to identify these crazy people, whether it's a crazy person from the left or a crazy person from the white supremacist, quote, right. I don't think such a thing really exists. But we need to know when someone is inclined to buy. There have to be markers. We have to figure this out. The victims, 8 dead, 7 are wounded, right? And a 6-year-old son is left behind. 3 of his family members were killed in the Xinjiang family. And 2 little girls, elementary school students, Daniela and Sophia Mendoza, were in 4th and 2nd grade. They were murdered by this nut. And the adults, 27 years old, and 3 out of 4 members of a family. It's just awful. It's just awful. And there's not much more we can say beyond that. We now know he is a white supremacist. And I would like to know the same about every killer. Give me something. I'm not going to use their names. Give me something to categorize them with. This is not political violence so much as it is crazy violence. And I'm easily, I do not categorize political violence unless it's something like the attack on the softball field, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, the shooting of George Wallace, the attempted assassination of Brett Kavanaugh. Political violence with an intention to change politics. Difference from hate-inspired violence, whether it's anti-white, pro-white, anti-Christian, bizarre belief system. We just have to figure out how to identify these folks before they hit. Russia is up against the wall. Putin gave a speech this morning in which he proclaimed that they're winning and everything is going great, and they're up against the wall. Financial Times. Russia's energy sector hit as Kremlin is forced to increase the tax. The lead item in Ellis Items this morning, news-items.com, news-items.com. Britain, which has prided itself on being ahead of its Western allies and introducing new weapon systems to Ukraine, now appears poised to send Kyiv the long-range missile the Biden administration has long denied it. In a procurement notice posted May the 2nd by British-led International Fund for Ukraine, a group of Northern European countries has set up a mechanism to send weapons to the battlefield. The United Kingdom's Defense Ministry asked for expressions of interest in providing strike capabilities with a range of up to 300 clicks or nearly 200 miles. The notice asked for responses within 3 days. No final decision has been made, according to a British official who declined to confirm the type, timing, or quantity of the weaponry under consideration. But the notice is a substantive step towards Britain itself supplying such munitions. The requested specifications and capabilities closely match its air-launched Storm Shadow cruise missile. Good. Get them what they need for the offensive, drive Putin back, and maybe we can get some peace there. Chaos and shortages in parts of occupied Ukraine amid Russian evacuation orders. Russia knows an offensive is coming from Ukraine, and they're trying to move the Russian-speaking people out of the occupied parts of Ukraine where they stormed in under President Obama, and they dug in the last year. The driver whose SUV struck and killed migrants in Texas is charged. He's charged with manslaughter and other crimes that are not murder one, homicide one. So he did not intentionally seek out. He's reckless disregard for their safety. He's going to go to jail for a long time. Looks like he's got a long sheet on DUI, but not a targeted killing, just a terrible tragedy by a drunk driver. It looks like. Biden faces broad negative ratings at start of campaign. This is more stories on the president's woes. And boy, did they get worse yesterday. I'm going to come back in the next segment and tell you. President Biden said he'd veer from Trump on immigration, Michael Shear's headline reads in the New York Times today. The reality is more complicated. Yeah, because we're going to have 4.5 million people this year come over the border. It was 500,000 in Donald Trump's last year. We had Governor Greg Abbott yesterday talking about what's going to happen as a consequence of the lapse of Title 42 with no action by Team Biden. Here's the governor of Texas at a press conference yesterday, cut number 8.
We're here today because of the impending end of Title 42 policy. With the Biden administration ending Title 42 this Thursday, President Biden is laying down a welcome mat to people across the entire world, saying that the United States border is wide open and it would lead to an incredible amount of people coming across the border illegally. President Biden's open border policies is going to cause a catastrophic disaster in the United States. According to the Biden administration itself, they anticipate about 13,000 people coming across the border illegally every single day. If you extend that out over the course of the year,
it's a flood unlike any I've seen. I lived in California from 1989 until 2016. I'm used to people who are in the country without permission. I'm used to the economy that they support. I'm used to all that, but it's never been anything like this. I was on special report on the panel last night with Mara Liasson and Vince, and Brett threw me the Title 42 question, cut number 15.
The bottom line, Hugh, is the politics of this. Even though the administration continues to say Congress is not acting, really it's President Biden that falls on his doorstep when the surge happens.
If you have the executive authority to forgive student loans, you have the executive authority to do whatever you need to make the country secure, which to make the border secure. And he has thus far taken a pose, struck a position of a hard no on anything having to do with enforcement. And I believe that's why he's at 36%. Age figures into it too. But Americans understand you can't take 4 million people in a year. It's not acceptable in any national security metric. The last year of President Trump, 500,000 people came in without permission. This year, 4 million, 72,000 a week. That's an Ohio State-Michigan game. And every week, another group of people come in, and they mostly look like young men who are going to take jobs and are going to take up space and are just not good for the country to allow in a wave. I mean, and by that I meant they're going to compete with other people for the jobs that Americans need. They are cheap labor. And a lot of them are underage and are going to be abused, and a lot of them have been abused. It is incomprehensible to me that Joe Biden is just saying, oh, don't worry about it. And it came back around. The panel talked about this, and it came back around for a quick bite, cut number 16.
And very quickly, I mean, can they go around the edges on Capitol Hill and get something that affects?
No. There's no fix. The president has to use his executive authority. If he can forgive billions in student loans, you can close the border. All right. Now, we also got into the president's age, and that's what I'm going to spend the rest of this on. And I just want you to hear my opening bid on the president's age, cut number 17.
You know, we don't know. It's one poll, but it seems to track with others, Hugh.
It does. Gallup came in at 38% approval, so the ABC Washington Post poll 36 does not sound like an outlier. You got the money quote. It's the one I had written down. I have a hell of a lot of wisdom, and I know more than the vast majority of people. That's not how one runs for the presidency. And I asked myself, what does General Secretary Xi, what does Vladimir Putin, what does the Ayatollah Khamenei think about Joe Biden. And I think they think he's infirm because that's what I see, that's what I hear. And I think the American people are coming to recognition he really can't do this. I'm expecting an LBJ 68 exit sometime next year.
You are?
Yes, because I don't think he can do it. And I don't think his wife's going to let him do it. And his friends certainly should be counseling not to do it. What do you think, America? I don't think he's running for president. I just think the decline is so precipitous, so visible, so omnipresent, that I really believe he is a placeholder. I didn't think he liked Kamala Harris enough to keep the field clear for her, but we'll talk more about this when we come back. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. It is a new day. Get up and get going. Coming up later today, David Drucker is coming along. I've got Ed Tiernan, who's president of Song for Charlie, Bethany Mandel, Representative Mike Turner, chairman of the House Intel Committee. And then the last half hour of the show and a little bit of the after show is I'm going to talk with Doug LeMaurice about podcasting. He's the best podcaster I know. And I have gone to school on Buckeye Talk and Orange and Brown Talk and the College Football Survivor Show. I've just gone to school on them, and I'm going to learn and talk to him about what he does and how he does it so that you will not make the mistakes I hear so many podcasters making. Now, I'm going to go back to what I was talking about before the break. President Biden. Okay, we go back to Friday night on MSNBC with Stephanie Rule. The president said this, cut number one.
Because I've acquired a hell of a lot of wisdom. I know more than the vast majority of people. I'm more experienced than anybody's ever run for the office. And I think I've proven myself to be honorable as well as also effective.
Now, they played that last night before Brett turned to me and asked me, what do you think? And I said this, cut number 17.
You know, we don't know. It's one poll, but it seems to track with others, Hugh.
It does. Gallup came in at 38% approval, so the ABC Washington Post poll 36 does not sound like an outlier. You got the money quote. It's the one I had written down. I have a hell of a lot of wisdom, and I know more than the vast majority of people. That's not how one runs for the presidency. And I asked myself, what does General Secretary Xi, what does Vladimir Putin, what does the Ayatollah Khamenei think about Joe Biden? And I think they think he's infirm because that's what I see, that's what I hear. And I think the American people are coming to recognition he really can't do this. I'm expecting an LBJ 68 exit sometime next year.
You are?
Yes, because I don't think he can do it. And I don't think his wife's going to let him do it. And his friends certainly should be counseling not to do it. The LBJ exit, the floor manager, wonderful professional, came up to me afterwards, younger woman, said, what is the LBJ exit? And I realized I had done the mortal sin. I had put in an assumption that the audience knew what I was talking about. LBJ was the incumbent president in 1968, and he was running for re-election, and the New Hampshire primary came up. Senator Eugene McCarthy of Wisconsin, I think, not Minnesota, Wisconsin, Clean Gene, is running a protest campaign against LBJ because of the Vietnam War. And they go up to New Hampshire, and at that point, it was in March, but it was still the first primary, and McCarthy got 42% of the vote. And LBJ was gobsmacked, and he dropped out shortly thereafter. He realized he couldn't do it. He said he wanted to win the war. He wanted to focus on the war. It was a nightmare. He was going to lose. I think Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to get. He's at polling at 14% now. If they go into the New Hampshire primary and they hold that primary the same day as they hold the Republican primary, which will be in January, I think Robert Kennedy is going to get over 20%. And it's just we do not want Joe Biden. And I went on to explain, cut number 18, what the central problem is with President Biden, cut number 18.
The other thing that was striking was the head-to-head with Donald Trump, the former president. In this poll, at least, in the registered voters, Trump is up 6, and that's a big, electability question for a former president that everybody said this is the strategy to win election again.
The key thing is energy in the executive. Hamilton wrote that in Federalist 78. Donald Trump has energy on top of energy. Some people don't like the energy, but you can't deny that it's there. President Biden has almost no energy, and the schedule every day reminds us. That's just energy in the executive, the sine non qua of what you need in the presidency. Joe Biden doesn't have because he's 80 years old. Okay, the president was yesterday at the White House Asian American event. Cut number 2.
I honored a group of trailblazing artists with National Medals of Arts and Humanities. The group included groundbreaking Asian Americans like Vera Wang and Joan Shingang, I'm going to pronounce it right, Shanga Kawawa. I think I pronounced it correctly. She can call me Joe Bitten.
Yeah, I have sympathy for people who have trouble pronouncing names. Archbishop, if you're listening, that's you. And Rajiv Chandrasekharian took me forever. Some of us are not gifted, so I don't throw them out on that. But keep going. Cut number 3.
First, we just launched a new website, flightsright.gov. Flightsright.gov.
That's wrong. It's flightrights.com. It's not flightsrights.com. You get one chance to do that. Cut number 4.
As we approach Memorial Day this weekend, and Memorial Day weekend, I'm rushing it.
I'm rushing it. He's not rushing it. He doesn't have the capacity. It's not his stutter. It's none of that stuff. He's an old guy. He's an old guy, and I love old guys. I'm going to be an old guy before you know it. But not because of Relief Factor. Not. Welcome back, America. I am Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening today. A lot coming up. David Drucker is after the break. Ed Turner is the president of Song for Charlie. This is National Fentanyl Awareness Day today. And so Ed is joining us to talk about that. Bethany Mandel will be coming along. Chairman Mike Turner of the House Intel Committee, just back from a visit through the Middle East, meeting with lots of heads of government, heads of state. And we'll talk with Mike Turner about that. And then a special half hour into the Overshow, not the after show, the Overshow. That's when I go long with a guest. Doug LeMaurice of Cleveland.com is the best podcaster I know. I go to school on he and his colleagues, Nathan Baird and Stephen Means, and their other colleagues, Dan Lobby and Mary Kay Cabot and Ashley Bastock, every single day. I don't miss an episode of Buckeye Talk or Orange and Brown Talk. They are my diversion. They are my entertainment. They are my joy in sports. And I've tried a lot of podcasts, and I put the request out to Doug. You've heard him on the show before during college football season. Would you come on and talk about podcasting? Because a lot of people are now flooding the zone with podcasts, and that's okay. Everybody can dream. It's like everybody who thinks they can be a talk show host, though. And Generalissimo and I have made a running joke over this over the years. Everybody's a producer. Generalissimo, are you there, by the way? Did you come in today, or are you sleeping?
I am here.
Oh, you're here. Oh, wow. This is an important day. Tuesday, and Dwayne is there. So I'm just, if I had a producer, this show would really click. Everybody thinks they can do a talk show, right?
Everybody knows two things in life. Number one, whatever it is they do for a living, and two, how to produce a radio show. That's the two things everybody knows.
Everybody knows. And in fact, the pool of people who know how to produce a radio show or to host it, they're very different skill sets, by the way. Producing and hosting are very different skill sets. I have nothing. Dwayne can do both. I can only do this.
And that's even debatable someday.
And that's debatable. Yesterday, I was taping a podcast with the very excellent broadcaster, Michelle Tafoya, and we couldn't make it work. And you were asleep. And I just said, oh, gosh, I'm pulling my hair out. So we finally ended up jerry-rigging something, but it worked. But people can't do them. People can't do both unless they can do the first part. And you got to have a talk show host first, then you got to have a producer. And if you don't have either of them, you don't have a show.
Right.
So that's number one. You need an engineer like Adam, and you need a technical person like Jacob, and we need a booker like our booking team and a scheduler. There's a big team of people who work on this, and we have a social media people, and that's what you need. But a lot of people want to be podcasters. A lot of people. Do you listen to any podcasts, Generalissimo, other than your own?
A handful, but not very many. I mean, between doing your show and doing our podcasting, that consumes an awful lot of time during the day between that.
You don't listen to an Angels podcast?
I really don't.
Or is it just too depressing?
It's really too depressing because we lost another stupid starting pitching. Or pitcher.
How is that? That is like the Bermuda Triangle of pitching. I don't know.
If you're a pitcher and you come to Anaheim,
go.
You can pretty much count on having a rotator cuff blow out on you.
Do not go. Say, no, I'm turning down the trade. Tell your agent, you don't have a no-trade clause. Well, then I'm quitting the game. It's the Bermuda Triangle of baseball.
Yeah, don't go to England.
Don't go to Anaheim.
Don't go to Anaheim.
Yeah.
All right, so back to President Biden at the White House yesterday. Cut number 4.
As we approach Memorial Day this weekend, and Memorial Day weekend, I'm rushing it.
Yeah, you're rushing it again. We're not approaching Memorial Day weekend. Cut number 5.
That's why I'm announcing a second critical step today to protect American consumers. Later this year, my administration will propose a historic new rule that will make it mandatory not voluntary, but mandatory, for all U.S. airlines to compensate you with meals, hotels, taxis, ride shares, and rebooking fees, and cash, miles, and or travel vouchers whenever they're the ones to blame for the cancellation or delay. And that's all on top of refunding the cost of your ticket. Airline passengers in Canada, for example, the European Union, and other places already get these compensations. And guess what? It works.
It actually doesn't help you at all. The last thing we need for an air travel industry that is coming out of COVID and is screwed up because of a surge of demand after no demand at all is for the government to regulate your snacks and where you're going to stay the night. It's just the last thing. There are airlines I do not fly, and there's an airline I always try and take. I try and take Alaska. Right? I try and take Alaska because they got the milk run from LA to Reagan and back and forth. That's it. And then I love every airplane that goes to the Portland International Jetport. And I just love Portland International Jetport because about four gates, 10 planes, and they call it the Portland International Jetport. It's like
about
the old
six people.
Yeah, it's never, there's a moose that takes up most of the space. There really is a moose in the baggage claim. And I just think it's the greatest airport in the world. It's like Orange County, John Wayne, when I first moved there in 1978. And people would come and visit me, and you had to go out on the tarmac to get your luggage. It was, old, simple, or Long Beach Airport. Old, simple. And now none of them are old and simple. But nevertheless, we do not want the president and Secretary Pete to screw this up. Now, President Biden went on, cut number 6.
I've never won an Academy Award. Can't act worth a damn. Can't sing, can't dance. Can't do much of anything.
Can't do much of anything is exactly right. Cut number 7.
I continue to call on Congress to pass the Junk-Free Prevention Act because that's what American consumers deserve.
Are you free of junk?
Play that one again, please. Cut number 7.
I continue to call on Congress to pass the Junk-Free Prevention Act because
oh my gosh, I think he's aiming for my studio.
Exactly right.
He's coming for my studio.
He's coming for you, boy. You should. Yeah, but there's a lot.
There's a lot of junk
free here.
Junk free. I'm looking around Studio Beltway and thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to take it all, isn't he?
That would be the junk fee.
Junk free.
We are not junk free here.
No, and it's a targeted thing. I think it violates the First Amendment. They're coming after the junk free.
That's a bill of attainder.
Junk Fee Prevention Act. And the junk fee is a new thing they came up with to sort of capture the anger of everyone about everything at all times, anywhere. That's what it is. It's like the movie that won the Academy Awards that nobody liked, everything all at once. The junk fees are everywhere, right? Because no one wants to actually raise the price. So you get knick-knacked and ticky-tack fees everywhere. And the president, you've got him, he's on the king. Yeah, cut number 7.
I continue to call on Congress to pass the Junk-Free Prevention Act because that's what American consumers deserve.
Can we put that in the save pile along with cut number 1? Let's play cut number 1 again.
Because I've acquired a hell of a lot of wisdom. I know more than the vast majority of people. I'm more experienced than anybody that's ever run for the office. And I think I've proven myself to be honorable as well as also effective.
Oh my gosh.
None of that is true.
None of it is true, and everybody knows. All right, even Brett Baer, who very rarely crosses out of neutrality. He didn't cross out of neutrality here. He's just reporting the obvious, but it sounds like he has an opinion on Biden. He doesn't. He's just reporting the news. Cut number 14. Brett is on with Martha McCallum yesterday, not on his special report show, but a different show. Cut number 14.
I think she's right. I think it's not only fragmented, but falling apart. It seems in this poll, and remember, the caveat is it's one poll, it tracks with where the approval rating has been going in a number of polls, including our own, which is down 36% approval. Mm-hmm. And then you have this real concern about the president's mental acuity, his ability to do the job, his energy, his ability to be president of the United States. the real concerns inside these polls, the specific questions. But the biggest one is the electability question. If you're running against former President Donald Trump, the whole premise for the Biden team had been, both in the midterms and now it seems like this election run, is to run against President Trump, former President Trump, and say he's extreme, say the country can't go down that road. Well, in this poll, the former president is up 7 points and leading with independents, a president who is still facing a number of legal challenges, as we know, who is still getting votes, or at least voters who say they'll vote for him.
Brett is right. The coalition is falling apart. Jacob, go back to one camera shot there. I want to tell you, though, that the age issue has just now completely consumed everybody, and everybody knows, and it's time to talk about Dad. That's what we're at. Time to talk about Grandpa. Time to take the keys away. And we just got to take the keys away. Back, America, the president putting a target on our back, the Junk-Free Protection Act. He's coming from my studio, joined now by David M. Drucker. I don't think he's got any junk at his house. Hey, David, how are you?
I'm great, Hugh. How are you?
I'm good. I believe it is now impossible not to talk about the president's age. It has become so glaringly obvious that he's an old guy, David, and his numbers are down to 36% in the Wall Street Journal poll, 38% in Gallup. Are those outliers, or does that reflect immigration, or does it reflect his age?
So, look, really interesting subject, obviously, and very apropos to discuss. The 36% is the ABC News poll. The Wall Street Journal poll a few weeks earlier, conducted by jointly by Biden's pollster and Tony Fabrizio, who has polled for Trump, show the president doing not so great, but better than that, right? Low 40s. And so what I always look for as a political reporter are trends and averages. I remember, and this isn't to dismiss this poll. Look, I just wrote recently with my colleague Audrey Fahlberg about the president's age and the fact that he every single day sets a record as the oldest person ever to occupy the presidency. And it is something that we know is on voters' minds. But what I want to see is not just this one poll, but I want to see successive polls and see if this is veered into problem territory for the president versus, well, it looks like a problem, but really when you look at the campaign like a binary choice, it's a problem that can be easily overcome, notwithstanding, overcome as long as they really don't want to vote for the other choice.
Now, David, a Rose Garden campaign is a tried and true approach. Jimmy Carter ran one in 1980. We haven't seen it since then. But to have a Rose Garden campaign, you've got to go into the Rose Garden and talk to people. The president doesn't do that. It's the least accessible president of my memory. I think Reagan had much more interaction with people. He used to cock the ear and pretend to hear people, and he couldn't hear them. Do you, on your metric of accessibility, how accessible or not accessible is Joe Biden to the press?
No, look, he's not. Well, look, he's not very accessible. I mean, that's just a fact. Now, Democrats tell me that they're not going to run a Rose Garden campaign, that you're going to see him traveling the country, and that, they don't really like to put it this way, but what they're basically saying with a wink and a nod is, this time he's got a big private plane to fly around on, and that's going to make things easier. So I'm actually not, based on what Democrats are telling me, expecting a Rose Garden campaign or a front porch campaign. Although I wouldn't blame the guy if he wanted to spend the summer at his beach house in Delaware, because it's very beautiful there. But I think that we're going to see him on the trail. And I think that if this age issue is what we think it is politically and it persists, he's not going to have any choice but to engage more, even though it will probably always be less than some of his predecessors, and to travel the country more to try and put that anxiety to rest.
David, I think this is becoming the on Golden Pond presidency. And that's the famous Henry Fonda movie where he is aging and he goes back one more time to his favorite place. The president is really not got the energy he needs for this. And it's a concern when you think about Xi and Putin and Khamenei, as I said on Special Report last night. What do you think they think of him?
Well, it is a very good question. I tend to think I look at it like this, Hugh. I think policy is a lot more important than energy, because energy invested in the wrong way doesn't really do the U.S. any good. And I would presume that if you're Xi and you're dealing with an aging Biden who is causing you trouble when it comes to your plans to take over Taiwan. That's more problematic for you than dealing with somebody who's more vigorous, who's willing to lay down and let you take the island whenever you want. So I really think this is a domestic political issue because, Americans for a long time have been concerned about the idea that, somebody who's going to have what we generally refer to as the most difficult job on the planet. You go in at 45, and we've seen people go in at 45, and they come out 8 years later looking like they're 10 years older than that, because that's just the kind of job it is. And so I think Joe Biden has some work to do on that front. Internationally, I think policy is much more important because policy is going to outlast the president.
Now, I have now come to believe it's an LBJ head fake. And I referenced it last night, and the stage manager at Special Report didn't know what I was talking about. LBJ gets challenged by Eugene McCarthy in 1968 when the New Hampshire primaries in March. McCarthy didn't win. He gets 42%, and LBJ drops out. I think our RFK Jr. can do this to him. What do you think?
I don't think RFK Jr. can do it because he's not running like the kind of candidate that's going to excite the Democratic base and where the energy of the party is. I think he's getting by on name ID and a general frustration that I can't believe we're going to have another Biden-Trump rematch, and Biden was a bridge to the future, and he was just the best guy for Trump at the time in 2020, but I didn't think this was a long-term proposition. To the extent that he is a threat at all, they'll make sure Democrats will, and the Biden campaign would, that Democrats know what his positions are on issues like vaccines and other things, and he's not going to get anywhere. What the president would have to worry about is a younger version of Bernie Sanders, or at least somebody young and dynamic and inspiring, even if they were center-left and not left-left. That's it, and that would happen only if he really appears to be a liability beyond the discussion you and I are having.
I think and wait and see. I think we're going to see Kamala Harris as the nominee with an exit in January. But we'll find that out. David Drucker will be here every step of the way, lead political correspondent for The Dispatch. You can read everything David writes at The Dispatch. Come back, hour number 2, straight ahead. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Bethany Mandel is my weekly guest. Good morning, Bethany. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I want to hit you with an out of left field. I don't know if your mom and dad are still with us or alive. I don't know if Seth's mom and dad are with us or still alive. How many of your parents have you got out of the 4?
I have 0. Seth has 2. So 2.
So you're dealing with 2 parents who are getting older, and you've already lost 2. So you lost your 2 parents, like Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I did, fairly early. Did you watch them age? Did you see what happened? I'm talking about Joe Biden's capacity. I think he simply aged out, and everybody knows it. And I think anyone who's had aging parents knows that. Am I right?
So I watched my grandparents get older, and I am not at liberty to say my in-laws are still doing great.
And so what do you notice when older people begin to lose capacity for change?
So I think most sort of quickly about my grandfather when that topic comes up, and he had a very slow decline with Alzheimer's. At the beginning, he really hit it very well. He would keep the topics on safe things from his sort of childhood and past, and he just got a lot quieter. He would stumble and mumble a great deal and sort of fade out of a conversation when he realized that he was out of his depth because he just couldn't function.
And so do you think I don't think the president has Alzheimer's. I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn. Do you see him aging in real time before your eyes?
So it's interesting. So I was talking to my stepfather, my mother's ex-husband, the other day, and before the election, when I was talking to him about politics, he's very liberal, and I said exactly this, like, I think that he's not really cognitively fully there. He said, that's fake news, that you've been watching too much Fox, and got very sort of heated and defensive. I had the same conversation with him the other day, and I said, I think he's a few fries short of a Happy Meal, and he said, well, yeah, that's true. And I thought that admission from my stepfather to be very interesting because he sort of steeps himself in progressive talking points. And he said, like, no, you're basically right. There is something going on there.
Now, this is neither right nor left. I sat down with President Reagan in 1992 4 years after he'd left the presidency to assist he and First Lady Nancy Reagan on some library discussion. And it was clear to me that the president had lost a step since he left the White House. I think he was about 75 at that point. So the question is, do you really think he's running? Because I don't.
So I do, because I think it's going to be another weekend at Bernie's situation. He still wasn't okay the last time he ran, but the alternative is who exactly? No one likes Kamala. No one likes Newsom. The bench isn't deep. I don't know who they go to if it's not Biden.
Our friend Vince suggested that, well, we were talking in the green room, and there were many people in the green room. So Vince and I were talking about this. He's, don't forget Michelle Obama. And I never have ever credited that because she was so, declarative. And they said, look, Chicago, they're doing the convention in Chicago. Why are they doing the convention in Chicago? It never occurred to me why they were doing the convention in Chicago. So if you're President Biden and you know you can't run again, but you don't want to be a lame duck, and you also don't want Kamala to be the nominee, what do? You declare and you exit late, right?
Yeah, I mean, too late to really give them an opportunity to find a suitable alternative. I mean, this is, to me, it sort of reminds me of the Pennsylvania Senate race and Fetterman, and he should have used that strategy and didn't. So I don't think that that's the strategy. I genuinely don't think that they know who to tap. And so they're just going to keep on sort of running out the clock and keep plan A in place, but plan B is never going to materialize. What is it going to be?
All right, so Governor Pritzker is out there, and we also have the Hunter Biden prosecution. Old people do not do well with stress on their family. I mean, it's terrible to see a grandparent who's lost a grandchild, for example. It's terrible. It's not as bad as the parents, but it's terrible because they don't know what to do. I think we're there with the president, and I'm trying to be respectful. I just don't think he can do the job. And I believe it's dawning on America that no matter how much they hate Trump or DeSantis or anybody else, somebody's got to do the job, and it's not the president. Do you think that is the dawn out there that is coming?
So I think that you're right. I think that the Hunter Biden situation is going to be sort of a Rubicon moment where he's going to get very angry. He's going to get very defensive. And, any father, especially one who has been through everything that he has, would. But I think that you're right. He's not going to be able to control his emotions. He's going to get really unbalanced if a Fox reporter, because that's the only kind of reporter who would ask him, if a Fox reporter asks him a question, I think that the only strategy in place for the White House communications team is to keep him away from open questions. And I mean, they're doing a great job. They joked about it at the White House, at the Correspondence Center, that he runs away from reporters. They have to keep him running away from
and he's slowing down. Bethany Mandel, always a pleasure. Talk about a serious subject with you. Bethany Shondark on Twitter. Go get her books. Go read her books. What are you working on, by the way? What's the new title in the kids series going to be?
Clarence Thomas. Very uncontroversial.
Good. It's deserved. The Gibraltar of American jurisprudence. Like him or not, he's there. Bethany, good to talk to you. Go follow her on Twitter at Bethany Shondark. Follow me.